Who knows what evil lives in the heart of games? The Shadow knows.
Hi, I'm the Shadow Knows and I'm back with another Let's Compare video. Tonight I compare 8-bit home computers. So you're going to see the Commodore 64, the Atari 800 XL, the Amstrad or Schneider CPC, the Sinclair Spectrum, and just imagine this is an original 48K or a Spectrum Plus, because I'll try to focus on your choice in 1985 and this machine wasn't available. And finally the MSX computers. This is a Sony HitBit, but there were others available. So yeah, let's have a closer look at each of those and let's try to put them away in a manner that they won't all fall and crash. So first let's have a look at the Commodore 64. This one. It has 6510 CPU, which is a 6502 with some registers to handle the memory mapping. 64K of memory. The famous VIC-2 video chip, which does smooth, soft scrolling in any direction, horizontally, vertically, and only 16 colors, but not too bad. 8 sprites. Technically 8 sprites per scan line, because it can handle raster interrupts and you can easily have more than 8 sprites. Famous SID chip for the sound. 3 channels, different waveforms, not just square wave like many others. Awesome machine. Let's have a look at the way how you can connect peripherals. 2 joystick ports, fully compatible with the Atari 9-pin standard. Only 1 button, but you can plug in 2 pedals for each port, and I think that you could in theory also use analog joysticks. Don't know if there are any games that make use of it. Power connector. This is the cartridge port. RF out, video out, and this gives you composite and S-video. Serial out for the floppy and the disk and the printer. A cassette interface, and you have to use a Commodore cassette drive, but the positive side is it controls the motor of it, and that's used extensively. And a user port, and nothing on the other side. Next we have the Atari, and it does have those silver function keys which are not very good. The cartridge slot on top. This one has also 64K of memory. By the way, the Commodore 64 has 38K of the 64K usable in BASIC. I'm not sure how much this has. Okay, this has 37K free in BASIC, which is pretty good. It doesn't have a Microsoft BASIC, unlike the Commodore. But unlike the Commodore, it has some basic commands for using the sprites and sound. This one uses a combination of the Antic and GTIA chip, which were designed by Jay Miner, who also did the Amiga chipset, and you can see some similarities. It has a huge load of different screen modes, up to 265 colors on screen at the same time. Not in a very useful manner, but you can have nice color bars in the background, just like on the Amiga. Just like the Commodore 64, it has 40 by 24 and the C64 has 40 by 25 characters. 320 times 200 on screen. Just like the Commodore 64, which also has a multicolor mode with half the horizontal resolution. The Atari does scroll horizontally and vertically, but not as smooth as the Commodore 64. The Commodore 64 also always uses a 320 by 200 raster for scrolling, even if it's in multicolor mode. So you have sub-pixel scrolling. This only scrolls on a pixel base. It does have sprites, but just like the 2600, it has this weird player missile mode. 4 monochrome players, 8-bit wide, unlimited height, and 4 missiles, 2 bits byte, and also unlimited height. And you can combine the missiles to get a 5th player, but not as good as the Commodore 64. Sound comes from the Pokey chip, which, yeah, I like the sound of the Pokey chip, especially for sound effects. It has 4 channels at 8-bit precision, and you can combine 2 channels to get a 16-bit precision. At 8-bit precision, the sound, if you use it for music, the music is a little bit out of key, because you only have 256 different frequencies you can select, and they do not always match the note you want to play, so you have to take the nearest. So let's have a look at the ports. Again, 2 obviously Atari compatible joystick ports. It's called peripheral, the serial I/O port, which you can use to connect the tape drive, the disk drive, printers, probably a modem. This is an expansion port behind this plastic flap, and I won't pry it off. A monitor port, and this sadly only gives you composite. I think you can mod it to give you S-video, but I don't bother. The picture quality is not as good as the Commodore 64 and the other computers. RF out, power input, on-off switch, and that's it. Onto the Amstrad or Schneider CPC. The Amstrad has more colorful keys, and the most noticeable thing about this is this has the number block and a built-in tape drive. This is a 464 CPC. There are 664 and 6128 models with a built-in 3-inch disk drive. I have one of those, but the disk drive is broken and I don't have a reasonable way to transfer to 3-inch disks anyway. So yeah, let's have a look at the other one. By the way, the Atari has basically the same CPU as the Commodore 64, but runs at 1.7 MHz when the Commodore runs at 1 MHz. So it's technically, theoretically faster, and it probably is if you just consider CPU calculating. This one has a Z80 at 4 MHz, and this does not mean that the CPU is 4 times faster than the Commodore 64 ones. The 6502 CPUs use less cycles per operation than the Z80, so it is faster than the Commodore 64s, but not that much. 64K of RAM, and you have 42K free in BASIC. It's a locomotive BASIC, which is said to be very advanced and very comfortable to use. I have to admit I haven't programmed much more than the simple Hello World program. It has 6845 Motorola graphics processor combined with a custom gate array. It's the same chip that is used on CGA graphic cards. It produces 27 different colors. It has 3 text or bitmap modes with 20, 40 or 80 characters with 25 lines, or 160, 320 or 640 by 200. In the low-res mode you can have 16 colors on the screen simultaneously, and absolutely no color clash or something like that. So in theory that is pretty neat. The higher resolution modes are great for using word processing or programming in BASIC, and with the disk drive you can use CPM on this. And if you wanted to do that and could live with the strange 3-inch disk format, this was a pretty useful machine for that. But it has some downsides in the games department. It has no hardware scrolling. Well, there is sort of hardware scrolling, but it's not documented by anyone and was rarely used in any games. No sprites, and the frame buffer is 16K if I remember correctly. So the 4 MHz Z80 has to manipulate a lot of memory to move anything on the screen. So most of the games are pretty slow. Sound department is pretty standard. 8912 sound chip, the same as in later Spectrums, the same as in the ST, the same as in the MSX machine, and I think it's the same as in the Sega. In some Sega machines, probably the same as in the ColecoVision also. Not the worst chip, but also not the best chip. Nothing to compare with the SID chip from the Commodore 64, and I'm not sure if it's as powerful as the Toki chip from the Atari. Yeah. Oh, I've forgotten the port. Wait. So the layout is a little bit different. We have a volume knob. This has a built-in speaker and a power on/off switch. Then this is the RGB monitor output, and it only outputs RGB, and I think a monochrome composite signal. Yeah, it's not composite technically when it's monochrome, but you know what I mean. Because those machines came bundled with a monitor, either a green screen or a color monitor. I have two of those green screens, and I'm too lazy to pull one in front of the camera. They're quite heavy. They also provided the power supply, 5 volt, but you can use a standard 5 volt DC adapter at 2 amps or more. This says floppy disk is the card edge connector, but I'm not sure they change it, at least in Germany with the later models, to connector similar to the Centronics port on the printer. So I'm not sure if the UK models were the same. It says floppy disk, but technically you plug in a floppy disk controller with some BIOS routines. Printer, I think it's Centronics compatible, unlike the Commodore and the Atari. You just need to wire the cable appropriately for the printer. And it says user port, it's a joystick port. It's partially compatible with the Atari standard, so you can plug in an Atari joystick, but the Amstrad has 2 buttons, at least support for it. And if you want 2 joysticks, you plug the second joystick into the first joystick, so you need a special joystick for that, or probably there's an adapter for that. And this is named I/O, it's an audio out. I don't think you can input something with that, and yeah, that's it. Keyboard's not bad, separate cursor keys, number pad, and I found the built-in tape drive really reliable. Much more reliable than on the Atari and the Commodore 64, but I come to that later. So now let's have a look at the Spectrum, and please picture the regular 48K Spectrum. So it has rubber keys, no tape built in, and yeah. And I really admire the Spectrum for its simplicity. It also has a Z80 CPU at 3.5 MHz, a little bit slower than the Amstrad, but that doesn't matter. Only 48K of RAM, but 40K free in BASIC, and I'm not sure about that. I've read it somewhere, not sure where. It has Sinclair BASIC, and no, this one hasn't written it, but the original machine had the commands written on the keyboard. So just like the ZX81, you had to only press one button if you're in programming mode. It's really a bitch to learn, but I think you can type quite quickly if you once you got used to it. Sinclair Basic, as I said, graphics comes from a custom ULA, 15 colors, 32 by 24 characters, 256 by 192 pixels in bitmap mode, and you have like the text mode, a 32 by 24 color raster, so you get this famous color clashing effect. No scrolling, no sprites, but it's very economic in its screen size, so I think it's 6K or what it uses for an entire screen. About a third from what the Amstrad uses, and the CPU is only 500 kHz slower, so games run much faster with this. You get a little color clash. It only had a beeper, just like the PC, but much slower CPU, so sound quality is worse than the PC beeper. This one, like all 128K machines, has the same sound chip as the Amstrad and the MSX. So yeah, you get sound on newer games that utilize the sound chip, and you get this free with some compatibility issues with older games. So yeah. The only ports on the original one were the RF out, a cassette port, and an expansion port, and of course a power jack. No on-off switch, nothing fancy. If you wanted a joystick, you needed a joystick interface. If you wanted to use anything else, you needed an interface. So yeah, there were two interfaces by Sinclair, interface 1 and interface 2. Interface 2 gave you two joystick ports, and I think interface 1 gave you an RS-232 serial port. I don't know if it gave you a printer port. It enabled you to use micro drives and cartridges. I think less than 20 games came on cartridges. This is a Plus 2A with a built-in. This is made by Amstrad. Build quality is not very good. It has a better keyboard, sort of real keys. A tape drive, which is worse than on the Amstrad machines. This has a built-in interface too, so you have two joystick ports, which are incompatible with the Atari. So you can, I think you can destroy the machine if you plug in an Atari joystick, or you can destroy an Atari compatible machine if you plug in a Sinclair joystick. Horrible idea. Well, at least it says use only with Sinclair yaddy yaddy joystick, and I have one, I don't know where. It's horrible. Worst joystick I ever used. It has a tape output, I think it is. It's not an input. RF output, RGB, Peritel card, an auxiliary port, and an RS-232/MIDI port with weird connectors. An expansion port, so you can use your Kempston joystick interface with this one, so you can use normal joysticks. And a printer interface. I think it's also Centronics compatible, and a power support. Yeah, but the original 48K version had none of those. And finally, yikes, the MSX Sony HitBit 75p, and this beast is quite heavy because it has a built-in power supply, which is neat, so you can't lose it. Yeah, this was Microsoft and the Japanese attempt to sell machines in the home computer market, and they had a different approach. Quite a neat idea, but the hardware didn't completely match up with the idea. Software also didn't, in my opinion. So yeah, they designed a standard design and standard software and minimum system requirements, and a compatibility layer. So basically everyone who wanted to build an MSX machine could do so, just by the rights to use the logo and design the machine according to the standard and by the Microsoft operating system. So this is a Sony one. Philips also made a lot of those, and I think they are among the most common in Europe. Very nice keyboard, except for the weird function and control keys, and the cursor key diamond is... The idea is great, especially for games if you don't have a joystick, but those keys are horrible. Yeah, basic design was around a Z80 again, at 3.58 MHz, basically the same speed as the Spectrum and not really slower than the Amstrad. 48K of memory plus an additional 16K of video memory, which makes it a total of 80K. And in theory you have 64K of memory free. All other machines use part of the memory for the screen buffer, so the Amstrad's 64K minus 16K of screen buffer, only 48K left if you have something on the screen. And the screen buffer is always the same size on the Amstrad, by the way. Yeah, this has extra 16K for video memory, but it only has 28K of memory free in basic. So I have to assume Microsoft also was already was a memory hog on the 8-bit systems. No explanation for that. MSX Basic version 1, a Microsoft derivative. Graphics comes from the TI TMS 9918, which is the same chip that's used in the ColecoVision, the Sega SG-1000, and an upgraded version in the Master System, and I think it's also the same chip that's used in the Texas Instruments 99/4. Something fell. This one, which already was out of the market in 1984, and also this is also an 8-bit home computer from the 1985 era. Not as good as the others, so I skip on that. Yeah, same graphics chip as the ColecoVision and the Texas and the Sega machines. 16 colors, 40 by 24 characters in text mode, 256 by 192 pixels in bitmap mode. And yeah, biggest downside of the MSX machines is it doesn't support any hardware scrolling, so the games that scroll are very choppy. 32 monochrome sprites, but with a big but, only 4 sprites on the same scan line. So if you want to have more, they flicker. Same sound chip as the Amstrad. It has 2 joystick ports, 1 cartridge port on top, and there should be a flap, but the spring is broken. 1 cartridge port here. Weird plug for the printer, not sure what standard it is, probably either an RS-32 or a Centronics. An AV port, a tape port, an RGB SCART port, and I hope it also does composite. I only used a black and white TV on it so far, and that worked, but that doesn't mean too much. Yeah. Built-in reset button, I like that. The Amstrad also has one of those, I think. No, it doesn't. No, none of them, of the other machines, has a built-in reset button, except for the Spectrum, but the original Spectrum didn't have. Yeah, so I think I'll turn on the machines and... Okay, I've turned the Commodore 64 on and wrote this little Hello World program. Yeah, it's a typical Commodore 64 screen. Nothing fancy, basic. It is not that great, but you can plug in a cartridge Simon's Basic and you still have more memory free than the MSX machines, and you can also get a cracked version of Simon's Basic and load it from disk. So yeah, let's have a look at the Atari. And that's one feature of the Atari. It does have sort of a screensaver. So it looks like that, and yeah, hello world. And somewhere is a break key, I think. Yeah, the Atari is in a quite awkward position. Yeah, over there is a break key. Different color scheme. Not sure if I like the Atari scheme more than the Commodore scheme. The picture is also a lot blurrier. That's the Amstrad, and I have to turn down the volume because I did not connect the volume. I only use the internal speaker. That color scheme actually isn't that bad. Typical hello world again. Where's the break key? Escape. Control escape. Yes, control escape. And I can easily one. No. That's mode 1. That's the 16 color mode. And mode 2 is the 80 characters 2 color mode. Especially useful for word processing and CPM. So let's have a look at the Spectrum. And that's the startup screen from the Spectrum. Really not... And the original 48K machines obviously did not write Amstrad. And this has a really weird programming mode, so I'm only pressing P for print. That's the same as with the ZX80 and 81. And now only G for go to. That's the program, and I only have to press R and enter. And that's nice, he asks me if he should scroll. And I'm in programming mode again. So now I have to move stuff a little bit. I haven't found a place for the MSX, and okay, and that's the MSX machine. My Sony one has this built-in menu. And this is the default startup message with measly 28K of memory. But the keyboard is excellent on this machine. So yeah. Now you've seen as much of the basic as you need to, because I guess what's of most interest are the games, and yeah, you have to watch the next video for that. Then I will show you some games. I think I make a third video where I try to show you some methods to get the games you downloaded from the internet, and I won't tell you where you can download them, but I show you some methods how you can play those games on the real hardware. I do it for all 5 of those machines. Not every game works with every setup on every machine. So yeah, you sometimes really need a disk drive or even the ROM cartridge or a ROM cartridge emulator to make it work. But on all of those machines with simple hardware you can make a lot of games running. So yeah, that will probably be the third part of this series. I hope you enjoyed this first video, and yeah, thanks for watching.